Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, their reasons behind their creative decision making, and what photography means to them. Matt Payne is a fine art landscape photographer, mountaineer, and the voice behind the influential podcast F-Stop Collaborate and Listen. Based in Durango, Colorado, Matt is known for capturing remote, high-altitude scenes throughout the state, many from his adventures summiting all of Colorado's 14ers and the highest 100 peaks. His striking prints reflect not only technical mastery, but also a deep reverence for nature's raw and challenging beauty. In this episode, Matt recounts the origins of his podcast, sparked during a creative rut in 2017. What began as a personal project evolved into a vital platform for open dialogue in the photography world. He discusses balancing the demands of podcasting with his own photographic journey, the role of passion in sustaining creative output, and the ongoing battle with imposter syndrome that every artist face. Matt offers a preview of his upcoming book, a blend of photography, storytelling, and social psychology that aims to elevate conversations around image making. He also emphasises the importance of authenticity, community, and carving a meaningful space in a saturated field. I hope you enjoy the show.
G'day, Matt. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. Fantastic having you on the show. Thank you for being a guest.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm a longtime listener of your show. It seems every month there's somebody falling out and a new person coming in, but you and I feel like are kind of the two longest.
I think so. We're getting up there. I know I'm way behind you, though.
Yeah. Maybe I'll take a break and give you some time to catch up.
And give me some catch up. Yeah. I did start a couple of years behind you, so
Fair enough.
I don't know. While we're talking about it, let's talk about the podcast before we get into the whys and wherefores of landscape photography. So why did you start your podcast? I know why I started mine, and long-time listeners will know that because it was a COVID project. But what was your reason and why are you interested in keeping it going for so long?
I distinctly remember being on vacation looking for some inspiration around landscape photography and podcasts, and I could not find one. And it was a point in my photography career in early 2017 where I was kind of starting to think about quitting photography. I just had a few really frustrating trips where I didn't come home with the epic photographs that I knew I was going to get, which is ridiculous, of course. And so I was just kind of like soul searching and looking for a way to supercharge my photography. And so I was like, what if I create a podcast where I invite like my favorite photographers and just have a more kind of casual, laid back conversation and kind of see if that gets me excited about photography again. And that was in 2017, and looking in the rearview mirror, it was probably one of the smartest things I ever did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I've definitely been a long time listener. I don't think I started listening until about 2019 or so, which was when I started listening to things like Nick Page and a few others that were around at that time. And yeah, so you're obviously a big inspiration for some of what I do, but I'm also, I guess, trying to do similar sorts of things, get inspiration myself, but also help to inspire others. And for me, that's a big part about it. I always had this idea of mentoring people and helping people with their own careers or hobbies, if that's how they want to play with their photography. And so for me, it's a bit of an extension. Is that how you see it now? I'm really interested in how your view of what you do has changed in the time since you've been doing it.
It sounds like you're lucky, Grant, because those early years were pretty rough. There's some really awesome episodes in there, but I was still learning about podcasting and trying to figure out what the show was going to be about. I would say for me, it's been a real benefit for my photography in terms of learning from some of my favorite people and honestly learning from people I'd never heard of too. That's been a real surprise for me, is like having people on that have no social media following and getting to know them and their photography and just seeing the world through a different lens, no pun intended, has been really great. Obviously, having the knowledge that you're inspiring others is really cool. However, I don't know how you are, but like when you're a podcaster, like you don't, I don't know, I don't get a ton of feedback. You might get the one off YouTube or Apple comment or review or whatever, which are sometimes like really negative and nasty, but you don't get a ton of like actual feedback. You get like a few thousand downloads or whatever. And it's, did people like it? Did people not like it? I have no idea. So that's been interesting. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is the networking, like making connections with all of these amazing people all over the world. In fact, I just got back from this incredible backpacking trip in the Northwest Territories of Canada and the Cirque of the Unclimbables with Nick Stover, who was on my
Nice.
podcast twice. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made that connection with him. So it's
Sure.
definitely helped to make a lot of friends and connections. And I think that's been the biggest thing for my takeaway.
Yeah. I've got to agree with you. There's not a massive amount of feedback, but that networking and the connections side of things is absolutely priceless to me. And it's been interesting. I've been to a few Insta meets or group meets and whatever, and had people come up to me, "Hey, I recognize your voice. I've heard your podcast a few times." And then you end up having a chat, maybe a beer or a coffee or whatever. And it's just great to actually catch up and meet with people that you've spoken to. I've also made it a bit of a task to try and meet as many people that I speak to on the podcast face to face, because I've been doing this via Zoom since I began, and I don't see myself changing. I don't really have the room where I am now to do a studio, and it's not always convenient, of course, particularly when you've got international guests, to try and get
Right.
people in the same room. Actually getting to meet some of these people is one of the most amazing parts of being part of this overall community. And for me, anyway, it's been absolutely wonderful. That and as you said, the educational side of things, it has been like a university education in photography, and that side of it for me personally has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I really enjoy is helping lift others up. And
Mm.
there's the inspiring other photographers, of course, but like helping other people achieve their goals in photography, whether it be like TJ Thorne has a book that he's trying to sell, or so and so has this new concept of workshops that they're trying to get off the ground, whatever it is, it's really an awesome feeling that you can help people try to accomplish their goals in photography because as it's not easy.
Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
That's right.
All right, let's talk about the photography now. So, what is photography in your life? Why is it there? What is it that makes you a landscape photographer?
It's interesting. I'm very similar probably to a lot of nature and landscape photographers in that my love of nature and the outdoors came first. What I've found is that the photography side of it has given me a deeper of appreciation about the benefits of being in nature. Like I've always known that it was nice and it felt good to be in the mountains or whatever, but I think photography gives you something through which you can actually start to show the rest of the world what it is you love about nature. And you can also show the world about how it affects you positively or things that are on your mind. Or so I love the fact that it's this kind of medium between you and the subjects that you love. And so for me, that's really the role that it plays is kind of an intermediary between what I'm drawn to, what I'm passionate about, what I care about, what I love, and showing the world what that looks like. Hopefully it's a little different than how other people see it, but not always. But I love that about photography.
Yeah, nice. And what about, I guess, that aspect of therapy which comes along with photography? I know for me, if I'm feeling a bit anxious, down, whatever it is, having negative thoughts of any kind, I know going out for morning's photography just changes things like that. It makes a massive difference. Is that the same for you?
Oh, 100%. In fact, I intentionally use it whenever I'm feeling those external pressures. For example, last November during election day, the day before election day, normally during the election, I'm like glued to the TV and glued to the news. But
Sure, sure.
I was sick to my stomach. I was super anxious. I just did not want to deal with the whole situation about the election. And so I intentionally went to the desert of Utah and spent about a week out there, and I had no cell service. I had my Garmin inReach so I could still communicate with people, but
Yeah.
that was intentional. I remember I did like an 8-mile hike in Capitol Reef up to this cool overlook I'd never been to before, and I was doing some infrared photography, and I got my inReach out, and I texted my wife, and I said, "Hey, I'm safe." And the first thing she sends back is, "Trump won." And I'm like, "No, you've ruined the whole day for me." Not to make it political, but, like, I was just trying to avoid the whole
Yeah.
situation. So, yeah, absolutely, for me, it's a very I wouldn't call it like an avoidance thing, but it definitely is where I'm most happy, where I'm most peaceful, and where I find the most joy in life.
Nice. And what motivates you creatively? This is one of the core things that I look at in the podcast. What is it that makes you want to be in nature in the first place? But moreover, what is it that you're specifically looking for in your photography that you say, okay, that's a nice scene. I want to capture that and I want to share it.
Obviously, fame and fortune, right?
Of course, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Loads
For
of
me,
money.
there's so much money in photography. It's amazing. So for me, I'll just give you some examples. Probably the last 5 years, my approach to photography has been very kind of like laissez-faire, for lack of a better way of putting it. Like I go to areas and places that I know will be fun and interesting and different, and maybe they have some unique geology, or maybe there's some weird trees there, or whatever it is. I'm going to go to that area, but I have no concepts in mind. I just know that I'm going to explore it and try to figure it out. And I love trying to unlock that puzzle with the camera, like just taking a slow hike through the woods or on the beach or whatever it is, and noticing things and then trying to make sense of, okay, is that a photograph? What does that photograph mean? Is there something I can say with this image? So I love that it makes your mind work, right? Like it forces you to engage a part of your brain that maybe doesn't get engaged a ton on the
Yep.
day-to-day basis. And then not to be cliche about it, but you do have those moments where you kind of get into that flow state where you're photographing like a bunch of rocks on the ground, and you look at your watch and it's been 3 hours and you're like, what the, where did the time go? And I love that about photography. So it's a very immersive experience. And for me, that creative side is very fulfilling. Like I'm very drawn to trying to make images that are personal and unique and kind of something that I noticed. Even if it's maybe not like the world's best image, like it's my image. And I get very proud about that. And then, of course, trying to improve upon that every time you go out. Okay, I know I've got that image or that type of image. Now, how can I one up that? How can I make that even stronger next time? So I'm always kind of thinking in those terms as well.
What the first place that you went that you said, hey, this is what I want to do now? I actually want to make photos. What was the first place that you were standing there going, wow, this is what I want to do with my life?
I would definitely say probably the most profound moment that I had is actually encapsulated by the photo that's right here to my left. It's a panorama, 360-degree panorama that I photographed in 2011. I was using a Nikon D7000 and a Tokina 11 to 16 lens.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I was so new to photography at the time that my idiot brain, I was shooting in f4 instead of f8 or
Yep.
maybe f14 or something. It worked out okay, but hindsight being 2020, there was improvements I could have made. But witnessing that light show on top of that 14,000-foot mountain with all of the mountains around me glowing with this red light from sunrise and this crazy storm light coming in, it was, to me, it was like, yes, I need to do more of this all of the time. So that was probably the key moment for me.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned one of the other keys that I know about you is that you're also a very keen mountain climber. Where does that fit within your photography? Is it about going to these unobtainable places, 14,000 feet and plus, and finding those places that are rare for other people to go to? Or is it about the conquering of the climb? And then while I'm here, I'll take a photo. How does it work?
Yeah, no, it's definitely shifted. So probably from 2010 to 2016, it was the first one or the second one. I'm sorry. Like I was very goal oriented. Like I had a checklist of mountains that I wanted to climb. I wanted to climb them by a certain date. And I had a very strict itinerary of the mountains that I would climb every summer. And so it was very much like the the photography was like, I'm just going to document these trips.
Yeah.
And then as I got more and more into it, the photography side of it started to creep into being the priority, which is actually not ideal when you're trying to mountain climb because the weather can be bad or moving in and you have to get up there and get down quickly. So it's like this weird balancing act of trying to make good photos while trying not to kill yourself at the same time. And I would say, so in 2018, I finished my goal of climbing the highest 100 mountains in Colorado.
Wow.
And that was a pretty important event in my life. I talk about it in my book, which I know we'll talk about, but I don't know if you've ever accomplished a goal that you've had a really long time that took a lot of effort and was insane to do. And then when you're done with that goal, it's this weird thing where you're overwhelmed with like joy and happiness, but also like emptiness and sadness.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, what now? What am I going to do now? And I spent a lot of time introspectively looking at myself and trying to figure out, okay, now am I going to do the top 200 mountains? Am I going to go climb in California? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? But by then, like the photography had taken over and had been such a larger part of my life by that point that I knew that I wanted to be in the mountains and I wanted to photograph in the mountains, but not necessarily, it didn't always have to be from the top of a mountain. So now my approach is I'll get really up in there and get to some really cool spots, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the top of the mountain. So
Yeah.
it's more photography oriented these days.
Okay. And who or what has been your greatest influence? Is it a person, a place, a moment like the one that you pointed out there on your wall?
Yeah, so I started climbing mountains when I was 4 years old with my mom and dad. And my dad was a particularly influential person in my life because we would go climbing a lot together when I was young, like 5 years old, 6 year old, 7 year old, eight, like all the way up into high school. And we would they were easy hikes. Like in the UK, they call it walking, right? You're like a 7 year old kid climbing a mountain. And it's pretty cool. So I did a lot of mountain climbing with my dad, and I got to see a lot of really cool stuff with him and experience the Colorado high country with him. And probably that combination of place and person and that relationship that I had with him, as well as the mountains, was really probably the most influential combination on my life and my journey as a photographer, for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah. You talked a little bit about the being very goal orientated. Clearly that then is going to influence how you shoot to a certain perspective. You set yourself goals. Do you have a process for setting goals? Or is it more, as you said earlier, laissez-faire, that you just kind of go, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to take photos? I just want to understand that dichotomy between those two attitudes.
It's a good question. So probably until 2017, my photography in general was very goal oriented. I got to go to this spot to get this photo in these conditions, and I got to edit it this way. I was very prescriptive in my approach to photography. And as a landscape photographer, that's pretty audacious to think that you you have control over all of those things, which is laughable and ridiculous. And of course, at that time, I was working a full-time job. My son was really young. So like I didn't have unlimited time. Like I would do quick trips into the mountains, like maybe a 2-day, 3-day trip, maybe 5-6 times a year. Those were my outings for photography for a year. And so of course you're just what you get. Yeah. And there was actually a very specific moment in my photography where that all shifted for me because that goal-oriented approach was not working at all for me. I know it can work for others, but I found that, man, unless you have a lot of time, it's a pretty unrealistic way to approach photography, at least for me. So I remember I was on a fall color trip and I was at this spot that I wanted to get a photo from at sunrise. And of course, sunrise was not the best. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I was just kind of like down on the whole situation. And honestly, I was thinking about just going home. I was like, why am I on vacation? Why am I burning up my vacation time? And I'm not having a good time. And so I found this trail that I've never hiked before, and I started hiking this trail. And I had no idea it was at the top. I had no idea it was on the way. And I got to the top of the trail, and then it connects up with this crazy, awesome other trail system that goes all the way up this massive mesa. And I started hiking that mesa, didn't even know where it went. And of course, like it was fall, so all the aspens were yellow down in the valleys below me. And
Yep.
then all of these Colorado mountains had snow on them. And then this crazy storm rolled in. So you had these like dark clouds, snow-capped mountains, fall color below, and this panoramic view of one of the most amazing places in Colorado. And I'd never seen anyone else photograph that scene before. And that act of kind of not knowing what I was going to find and just going into it with this attitude of discovery and having no expectations of what I would find, that was a really big eye opener for me in terms of changing the way that I approach my photography now. So
Mm.
now I'll still go to places like that. I'll still hike trails like that, but maybe not know what's at the top of the trail, and we'll just see what happens. And I find some of my best photos I get from that approach, like just whimsical and just responding and reacting and figuring it out. And I that mystery and not knowing what the day is going to be like and making sense of it. So yeah, the goal thing didn't really work for me photography wise. Obviously, I have other goals related to photography.
Sure.
So like releasing a weekly podcast, I haven't missed that in almost a decade. There's other goals that I'm very tied to, but it's not the image making process itself,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird. You brought it up as a juxtaposition, it's a contradiction. Totally agree.
Yeah. These are what photographers are like, though. They may think one way and then do something completely different. That's one of the beauties of photography and art and creativity in general, I think, is that you might be thinking, I need to do this, but what you actually feel when you do something different gives you a far better result than the thing that you actually had in your sights before. And for me, I know that I've done similar sorts of things. You go out expecting ridiculous weather to behave the way that you want it to, and it doesn't, and you come away going, oh, that was disappointing. So you turn that on its head and you go, okay, what can I do now? I'm here anyway, so let's look at what else is here. Don't worry about the sky, don't worry about the waves, don't worry about the color of the leaves on the trees if you turn up for autumn a week late or a week early.
Yeah. And I think, isn't that the heart of creativity, right? Like
Absolutely.
you're kind of creating something out of nothing. And maybe you don't even know exactly what you're creating in the moment until the process is over with. I think a lot of painters are that way. And I just found that that former approach to photography that was very prescriptive and robotic, and I'm going to go get this photo that I saw from this person and this location. Sometimes it would get good photos, but most of the time it just left me feeling kind of empty and like I am not a participant in this creative process.
Sure.
I'm following a blueprint or a script, but I'm not actually putting any part of who I am into this process. So my approach now is much more satisfactory for the way I think now.
I think that expression of yourself and putting that into your photography is absolutely key. And I know I've been talking about that with quite a few photographers recently. And it's sometimes, I think, a hard thing to do because you need to reach pretty deep inside you to understand what it is that you actually want to put into it. Now, if you want to go around trophy hunting and saying, okay, I've got the Grand Canyon, I've got Mount Hood, I've got Mount Rainier, etc., whatever it is, I've got all of these places ticked off and I'm running around doing that, and that's your goal, fine, you can do that.
Sure.
But I don't know, as you said, that it's going to be necessarily as fulfilling as finding something that's a little bit different, a little bit out of the way, or even if it is in one of those locations. And it's one of the things I challenge myself here in Sydney, my hometown, is how do you find something that's a little bit unique there that hasn't been shot to death? Because there's only
Right.
so many places you can stand for certain views of certain things like the Sydney Harbour Bridge or the Sydney Opera House, which is like the two most photographed things in the city.
But
How do you make that a little bit different? And sometimes it's finding conditions that are a bit different. Sometimes it's just finding a different place to stand. Go and get yourself into an uncomfortable position as opposed to one that's a little bit more comfortable. And that to me is far more fulfilling. And as I said earlier, you reach down a little bit deeper into yourself to drag that out.
yeah, I want to go back to something you just said about the expressive photography requiring you to dig deep and it requires effort and whatnot. And yeah, I had a very fascinating conversation about this with my friend Michael Bellino last fall. while we were in Utah photographing cottonwoods. And we were kind of joking about this idea of expressive photography because I think that there's been a lot of emphasis on that kind of digging deep and saying something really emotional about your images or whatever. And I think it actually can be a lot distilled down to be something a lot more simplistic and less philosophically heavy. And I think oftentimes it's really as simple as first, you have to know yourself a little bit, right? What you're into, what
Yeah.
you're drawn to. But then you just have to like be a little bit more of an interesting person, like read books, maybe read some philosophy stuff, things like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. But then I think it's really just comes down to leaning really heavily into you see something that you gravitate towards or that you feel something about. Oh my gosh, the way that water is rippling right there, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to photograph that and I'm going to figure out how to make that work because I think it's neat. I don't think it's like oh, that water makes me feel so introspective about the way that I am with my family. I don't think it needs to be that.
Yeah, it's on. And when I say reach deep, that's not what I'm. That side
But
of
I
the.
think a lot of
That's
people do though.
not what I'm talking about. It is reaching down for. Okay, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you like?
Yes.
What is it that you like about that? Whatever
Right.
that is, whether it's the Sydney Opera House, the Grand Canyon, whatever, a bunch of daisies in your backyard. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That-
Exactly.
and your connection with it, that's what you've got to grab onto and pull out. Because if you're not doing that, all it is, okay, I took a snapshot of the Sydney Opera House or the Grand Canyon or that bunch of daisies.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that because I struggled for years listening to people who talk about expressive photography and how it's changed their approach to image making. And I think I put a little bit too much weight into or misattributed what they were saying to like
Sure.
having deeper meaning than it did. And for a long time, I was like, I guess I'm not a very interesting or expressive photographer because I don't feel something when I'm making images or when I'm editing. And I think the aha moment for me was like, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
One of the things that we do need to talk about, and we might as well do that now, well, you mentioned it earlier, is you've got a book coming out. So let's talk about that project, how that has come about, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and where you see that going when it's finally released.
Love it. So the book is totally unique and different and unlike anything else that's been done by other photographers before, which means it's either going to be really good or really not good. So hopefully the former, not the latter. So I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and my favorite modality of psychology is social psychology, which is kind of like the study of human groups and interaction and among people and things like that. And I just love, love, love social psychology. There's so many things that you can get out of it. And so, anyway, in 2023, I through hiked the entire 500-mile Colorado Trail in 35 days. And I set out on that trip with the intention of coming out of it at the other side with something that I can use. That was kind of the parameters. And so the guardrails I put around that were to every day force myself to think about a specific social psychological concept. And then that night when I would get to camp, I would do a video journal to talk about what I thought about and what I learned and different things I know about it and stuff like that. And so I did that every day for 35 days. And I did some journaling and writing and video journaling about that. And wasn't totally sure what I was going to do with it. I was like, that was cool, but I don't know what to do with this stuff now. And I hate to waste it. Even though it was valuable, I still felt, okay, there's more here. There's more I can do with this. And Nick Stover, he has a grant program that you can apply for called the Inspired Creator.
Right.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to light the flame under myself and I'm going to apply for this grant. And if I get it, that means I'm committed to doing this project, whatever that looks like. And anyway, long story short, I got the grant. Thank you, Nick. And then we had a couple of Zoom calls, and he actually mailed me like 3 or 4 books to read that have inspired him. They were way different formats because my pitch was like talking about the Colorado Trail and these psychological things. And he was like, also, you've done the highest 100 mountains in Colorado and you're a photographer. There's more here that you can use. I was like, you're right, but that's such a huge scope. And how do I even do that? So I grappled with that for probably 6 months. And finally, over the course of about a year, I hammered out a book. And so it's got 25 essays. It's a collection of about 140, 150 images, all captured on my mountain climbing journeys or on the Colorado Trail. And I kind of introduce a concept. So, like, one concept I talk about is like forgiveness. And I'll introduce the idea. I'll talk about some examples from climbing mountains or the Colorado Trail or both, where I leverage that concept. And then I will bring in some science around that, some social psychology research that kind of supports what I'm talking about. And
Sure.
then there's like an action plan or get takeaway for each chapter for the reader. So it's like this weird amalgamation of photography, essays, psychology, self-help, inspiration. So it's kind of all over the place.
Wow. Okay. The scope of that does sound pretty huge. And I guess, as you said, you took 6 months to kind of hone down what it was going to look like. What's that process actually been like, digging into that process a little bit deeper? What sort of decisions were you faced with, and what sort of things were you thinking when you said, okay, I'm going to do this rather than that?
Yeah, so obviously I had those 35 video journals from the Colorado Trail, which was incredibly useful because I
Mhm.
could kind of refer back to my thoughts. And then what I would do is I would do some research on what are some of the what's some psychological research that supports those ideas that are interesting to me and or relevant to the concept. So I collected all of that information. And then fortunately, I have created a blog post for every single mountain climb I've ever done. So, like, I have all of the history of every single one of my mountain climbs, plus
Amazing.
all of the Colorado Trail was pretty fresh. So I was able to think about and reference different events that I've been through, like a lot of weird, like life and death situations, a lot of
Sure.
kind of aha moments with hiking partners who, for example, my best friend Sarah, who is now Silas, like we connected on the trail over they had a suicide attempt right before we met, and we climbed a bunch of mountains together, which was like trail therapy. And then, like, way later in our relationship, we were climbing a mountain and they disclosed to me that they were going to transition from female to male. And what is that like? And so I've had all of these really amazing experiences with other human beings in nature. And so I've had this kind of big thing I can draw from, this big well that I can pull information ideas from. So it's just a matter of trying to piece together what those things looked like on a really chaotic, like spreadsheet kind of.
It sounds interesting.
Yes.
The selection of I've spoken to a number of people that have done books or videos or whatever, and that selection process or down selection process, because there's only so much space and there's only so many images. I take it you've got total creative control over this, as opposed to somebody
Yes.
that's publishing it with, say, a trope or one of the other publishers that are out there. So, in terms of that, how did you go about down selecting the images that you're including in the book, and how do you actually cull and say, okay, this one versus that one?
No, it's an awesome question because it's the thing that I was dreading absolutely the most about doing a book,
Yeah,
any type of book whatsoever. And I
I
think,
dread it every time I update my website.
or get home from a trip and you're like going through Lightroom. Yeah, exactly. Which of your children are you going to sacrifice to the
That's
photo
it.
gods today? So kind of in a serendipitous way, the format of the book was kind of like a self-selecting kind of limitation of what I could or could not include in the book. Like it had to be Colorado.
Sure.
So that eliminated a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And then because of the fact that I was tying in specific stories or experiences or moments, I was using photos from those trips. So that was really helpful in terms of picking images to put into the book. I had to go back and re-edit a lot of older stuff that was like not good at all. Like I had to
Mhm.
just completely redo it all because it was like 2011, 2010, 2012 stuff. And so in some ways, like that was a little bit painful because it's my photography is so much better than that now, but that also encapsulates that entire moment of time and that story. So I have to use it. And
Sure.
then beyond that, it was a matter of just I used collections in Lightroom and I would just pull over a lot of my favorite images from Colorado that I've captured over the last 20 years and then kind of just referred to that collection and exported all of them. And then I would kind of mix and match and pick things that would kind of go with the theme of the chapter, or maybe there was a metaphor within the photograph that fit the theme of that particular essay. So that's kind of how I approached the process anyway.
Yeah, okay. And how do you feel coming out the other end of that now about the body of work that you've actually created? Because some people, as you kind of said, you've got this goal and you get to the end and you go, okay, what's next? But I'm interested in, are you proud of it? Are you happy with it? You still got tweaks to make? Where do you sit with it at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm like 99% done with it. I'm just going to add some maps that I actually hired a cartographer to do some maps for me that are about the 100 highest mountains in the Colorado Trail, and combining those into one experience. Figuring out where I want to put those maps within the book, I think probably towards the beginning makes the most sense. And then I can finally finish the table of contents, and then literally I'm done.
Yeah.
I've already got the publisher figured out. I got the materials figured out. I've got a Kickstarter campaign already loaded up and approved and ready to roll as soon as I push the button. It's just a matter of that day coming, which is September 5th, I believe.
Okay.
It's a Friday. And then to answer your other question, how do I feel about it? There's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes into pouring your heart and soul into a book project, because I think the biggest doubts that I have are around the fact that it's completely different than anything I've ever seen before, which was intentional. I think the closest you could probably come to what I'm doing is like maybe one of Guy Tall's books, except his are like they're essays, but the photography is just thrown in there. It's not really related to the chapters, and he doesn't really talk much about his personal experiences. It's more just about, I don't know, I love his books, so they're huge inspirations. In fact, he wrote the foreword to my book, so I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I'm very proud of it. A lot of work went into it, and I just don't know. We'll see what people think. That's the best I can give you right now, Grant.
Well, that's a great place to be, I think. Almost finished. Pretty good. When you finish, I'm quite sure you'll probably have more thoughts about where you're at with it.
Yeah, I think when I actually export it for the printer, that'll be the moment that I'm like, this is happening.
Yeah. All I can say is I wish you all the best luck with getting it out there and getting people to buy it. And I'll certainly be lining up for a copy, because it sounds like a really fascinating piece of work and something well worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been fun learning InDesign. I dabbled in it in the past, but it's been really fun, like learning how to use that. And
yeah, it's a slightly different beast to Photoshop, isn't it?
Way different, but similar enough that it's okay. I think you do this. Oh yeah, it does work.
Yeah, some stuff's common, but like Photoshop, there's 100 different ways of doing the same thing.
Oh yeah. So I'm super thankful, because we talked about the connections we made through the podcast. One of the biggest connections I've made in my life is with Tim Parkin, who runs On Landscape Magazine, and we co-created the Natural Landscape Photography Awards with Alex Nail and Rajesh Jyotiswaran. And Tim does all of the book design for our NLPA books. So I haven't really been a part of that process. And so I was like, Tim, I need your help. And he was very helpful. He's like, oh, just do this. And here, let me create a couple of like templates that you can start with. And he was really helpful in that way. Yeah.
Fantastic. As you brought it up, let's talk about the awards and how that works and where you're at with that and where that's going next.
Yeah, so by the time this episode comes out, we will be just finishing up live judging, which will be exciting. So year 5. And every year we do the competition. We're trying to make improvements on the process, on the categories, on how we define things, try to fix things that we think maybe are not working with certain things. And so every year we're making these little tweaks and trying different stuff out. This year, our big emphasis is to try to get more people to submit unique grand landscape images. We have seen a lot of criticism of the competition over the last 3 years around the types of images that seem to do best, which are quieter, more intimate scenes. I think there's a lot of reasons for that we probably don't have time to get into, but I think it's easier in some ways to create unique intimate images than it is to create a unique grand landscape that's interesting. And then, of course, you have that if someone sees that there's like presumably a bias against that kind of work, they're not going to enter it. So we were very clear in our communication. We want you to enter this stuff. We promise it's going to get awarded something this year. Of course, who knows? Maybe it doesn't, but we really wanted to see the best of the best this year. And I will say that while about our entries were about 12% lower, I will say the overall quality of everything
Okay.
was higher. So it should be a very fascinating year when the results come out. Yeah.
Yeah, look forward to seeing what the top 10 or so look like. It's always an interesting experience watching what people think looks good.
Yeah, I was going to be curious. Do you have that same perception about NLPA, or do you have other thoughts on that?
Personally, I've seen some of the criticism for it because of that, and I don't enter a lot of competitions anyway. There's a select few that I'm kind of into, not because I'm keen on winning, but because they actually give feedback and that sort of thing. And
Sure.
that to me is one of the important things. But I ran the landscape photography awards for 1 year, and the reason why I didn't keep going was it was really hard to try and get sponsors in and get people
Oh, yeah.
to
It's crazy.
back it up, because I actually funded all of the awards, made a loss, which I totally expected and was totally fine with. But yeah, just couldn't afford to keep doing that without some kind of sponsorship behind it. But having run them, I've got a very good appreciation of what it takes to actually run one of those, and what it means to be really authentic around making sure that people are putting in work that is both valid in terms of technical capability, but also artistic quality as well. And making sure, of course, that there's not a lot of digital accessorizing, for one of it, included in them, and making sure that people are actually fairly honest with what they're doing with their work, or as honest as you can be, because everything's edited. Let's face it, it's just a matter of
Yeah.
how much it's edited and whether or not somebody's taking artistic license. And personally don't have a problem. You can do whatever you like with your images. If you want to have flying unicorns and rainbows, fine. Not
Yeah. No, I think actually, my personal opinion, I think that's why we haven't seen a lot of grand landscapes winning at that in our competition. Because as you mentioned, our rules are very specific around what you can and can't do in terms of digital manipulation. And
sure.
when I think of the best, let's not use the word best. When I think of the most well-known, famous, highly acclaimed landscape photographers who specialize in grand scenic scenes, most of them are doing some pretty wild stuff in Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot, like probably the majority of those people, that's what they do. And so if that's kind of the people who are the best at that type of work, they're not going to be entering our competition because it will not pass, right? So I think that's
You'll
another
go
one.
and show your raw files and they'll go, okay, here they are.
Yeah,
They look
exactly.
nothing like
Yeah.
the final image.
Yeah, so I think that's been one of the limitations that we've seen in terms of kind of a self-limiting effect. And there's other things too, but I think that's probably the main one that I can think of. And also, like I said, I think it is exceptionally difficult to create grand scenic images that are different.
Yeah,
You haven't seen before, that are in good conditions, that are composed well, that are edited. I think to check all of those boxes is really a pretty high bar.
absolutely. One thing that I've actually wanted to ask you for a little while is, have you thought about, and I know it is the natural landscapes, but have you thought about having an open category where you can go nuts with your editing, just so that people who are really good at editing can have a place to be?
I think we've discussed it. I don't think we're I don't think we're opposed to the idea. It's just a matter of, it seems fairly unlikely that type of work is going to win the overall prize, because it kind of goes against the ethos of the competition. But in terms of winning like one of our special awards, like a $500 prize, I could see it being something. But then it's, will people do it? I don't know.
Yeah, for the I guess the thing for me, and certainly when I ran my comp, one of the reasons why I didn't include anything like that was because it becomes an editing competition as opposed to a photographic competition.
Sure.
And for me, it's not really what it's about. It's actually about, let's see what you can do, both with the camera and your editing skills. But if you don't have a good base, then I don't care what your editing skills are like, other than, okay, can you make that really good base look even better?
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of images over the last couple of years that probably would have done much better with less heavy-handed editing. Some of those we've asked them to re-edit and we've put them in the book, but like they could have probably won an award if they didn't try to push it so far. Yeah, it is a tough one though, because I think people would be maybe surprised to learn that I edit a lot. I don't swap skies. I don't
Sure.
change colors around or anything like that. I don't warp or stretch mountains. But especially if I do anything that's abstract at all, I'm like, oh, no one knows what this is anyway. I'm just gonna let's see what I can do here. But I'm also super honest about it. But I think that's the
Yeah.
differentiate.
That's
Yeah.
the key, is actually being upfront and transparent and saying, hey, here's a composite or here's an edit, and I chuck this shading in or whatever it is that I've put in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, especially with black and white photography. I actually really enjoy doing black and white because like it's already an abstraction from reality.
Yeah.
Why not just go nuts with it?
It's one of the things that I've always noticed, both in social media but also competitions, black and white, unless and I've entered the Mono Awards over here in Australia quite a few times simply because it is a little bit different. And I actually quite like working in mono, mainly because that's where I started in the film days, back when I started taking photos. Color was expensive, more expensive to develop. But fascinated by the fact that monochrome work in competitions in particular, but also in social media, just doesn't draw the same attention. And yet there is just some fantastic work, both on the editing front, but also in the natural landscape front, where people are putting in a huge amount of effort, but don't seem to be getting the same sort of reward. Is that something you've noticed, both from running the competition, but also in talking to photographers on the podcast?
I've definitely noticed that people who specialize in black and white and only do black and white tend to kind of fly under the radar a little bit. There's obviously some exceptions to that, like Cole Thompson or John Sexton or those kind of people. But I think part of it is it's kind of seen as a little bit kind of more artsy fartsy for the general public. And so like there's not splashy color. And so I think you're already shooting yourself in the foot in terms of like social media stuff, which is fine. Like I don't think people should be photographing for social media anyway. So I think there are some disadvantages to that particular thing. I have noticed in terms of competition goes that black and white work, like last year we had an entire black and white category,
Yeah.
which I think was nice because we got to see some really exceptional black and white work submitted. But I will say, dating back to the very first year, we've actually put quite a bit of black and white imagery into the books. And so I think it can do well if it's tasteful and edited nicely. And I think maybe part of the problem is that a lot of people who don't specialize in it and maybe just dabble, which is what I did forever, like it's more of an afterthought, like, oh, it's flat skies or blue skies. I'm just going to turn it to black and white and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the people that are creating black and white work that's exceptional are approaching it from that perspective from the very beginning. And that completely changes the way you see the landscape and the tonality of things and the textures. And you're eliminating color, so you're more focused on form and those kind of things. So I think to be good at it, you need to like kind of just force yourself to just do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do both, but like when I know it's black and white, I know it's black and white. And actually, about a year and a half ago, I converted one of my cameras to infrared just so that I could do much more black and white. And I've been really loving that.
Yeah. Interesting. I probably dabble more than anything because I like color too. But I also deliberately gone out on small projects I did one last year, I think it was, might have been the year before, and actually went out in harsh light conditions. So middle of the day, blue sky, no clouds, and looking for textures in rocks,
Yeah.
birds, whatever I could find, and deliberately just going, okay, these are going to be black and white. I'm shooting them in color, but I am actually going to convert these in black and white. That was always the mindset, was, okay, let's see what we can do with these harsh light conditions, and let's make something a little bit different, that very different for me, because I'm usually about being in water. This was up in what we call the snowy mountains, which is currently reasonably snowy, but I mean, we're talking about, I think, was it 2,200 meters is our tallest mountain. So nothing on Colorado.
Yeah.
That's a long hill for you.
I was going to say, I live at like 6,600 feet. So,
Oh, yeah. I went to Canada and we landed on a lake in a valley, which was at 2,200 meters.
right. I was going to say, I love photographing black and white in winter. It's one of my favorite times to switch over to that way of thinking.
Sure.
I recently back in March, I did a 10-day sailing trip in the fjords of Chile. And I did a lot of black and white photography when the weather got really weird and bad and snowy. I just loved the way that the black and white just forced you to think about texture and mood and drama, versus the color becomes a distraction from those things sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is success in your photography? What constitutes success to you?
It's hard, man. It's hard because right now it does pay the bills. So for me, like, being able to continue for it to pay my mortgage is success, which is a weird metric to use because you can get kind of lulled into like complacency. Oh, I'm making money, so I guess I'm doing okay. So I try to compartmentalize that a little bit, especially if I'm doing a trip for myself. Like in 2 days, I'm going to go do a trip for 5 days and in the desert, and I have no idea what I'm going to get, and I don't care. And if I'm selling that work, that's cool, but that's not the goal of it. The goal is to really engage with nature and have a good time and enjoy the time I have with my friends and my experiences out there and connect with the desert. So whenever I can do that, whether or not there's a good photo that comes out of it, that to me is success.
Nice. Yeah. What about the flip side, when inspiration is lacking? Do you ever get that feeling of, I just don't want to do it? And what do you do about that?
I do, but it's mostly around processing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a really big creative slump a couple of times over the last 2 years. And it was always after I got home from a big trip.
Yeah.
I have 2,000 photos, 3,000 photos, and I'm like, I know there's some really cool images in here, but I just don't, I'm so just burnt out from photography right now. So I've been listening to that more now in terms of giving myself space to just be okay with it, sitting there for a little bit and revisiting it. Even though I know there's good images in there, it's okay to let it simmer for a while. And so I've had some of that, but I think the key for me is I like to focus on other hobbies too, or just things I like to do. Like I love to watch baseball on TV, or I like to watch movies or TV shows or read books. So if I'm feeling that lack of photography inspiration, I'll switch to a different form of media. And usually something will strike me, like you're reading something on psychology and you're like, oh, that could help me with this kind of situation when I'm out there making pictures. So
Nice.
I think that's, for me, is like that self-awareness is the important thing. And then just giving myself the space to like be okay with it. Don't let it get you down, or there's nothing wrong with you. Those kind of thoughts. Like,
Yep.
it just is. It's no big deal.
The imposter syndrome, when that sets in.
Yeah, I struggle with that one still, but
Everyone does. Yeah. I had a long career in IT, nearly 30 years, and ended up being a CIO for a couple of companies and then a government department. And I was sitting in quite a few meetings, sometimes spouting not just jargon, but talking about what it was, trying to explain what we were trying to do or trying to understand what somebody else done. And I'm also in the back of my mind going, hey, you shouldn't be here. You don't really know what you're talking about.
Pretty much had that my
Sometimes
entire
sitting there going, hey, you actually do know what you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. When those thoughts start creeping up, I think it's good to validate it, but then also remind yourself, like, no, you belong here and here's why. And it
Absolutely.
usually doesn't take me that long to come up with a list of reasons why what you're talking about is complete garbage.
I know I can talk garbage about just about any subject. I'm interested, though, as a fellow podcaster and one that's been doing this a lot longer than I have, do you get the same feelings of, oh, I'm not inspired to do next week's podcast? Or how do you deal with that? Because I know sometimes I wake up and I go, oh, I got 2 podcast recordings to do today, and I really don't feel like doing either. And it's not the person,
Oh, yeah.
it's just me.
Yeah, I deal with that a lot, honestly. And I can't tell you how many times where I've had the experience where I had that feeling or attitude, and then I do the recording and I'm like, that was amazing.
Yeah,
That was so
exactly.
cool. That was so fun. I had such a good time. I learned something. Why did I feel like it was not going to be cool? Right. So
That's right.
I have no evidence to support my feelings. And so I need to just squash them. Now, where I do get those feelings where it is justified is when you're staring down the barrel of having 10 or 15 episodes that are unedited, and you know that you only have 2 weeks left until you're leaving and not going to be home for a month. That is overwhelming. And
Quietly.
oftentimes I let that, the goal is to keep it coming out, keep it on schedule. So you got to do it.
So, yeah. I always look at it, I've made a promise or a pact with this other person that I'm going to support them and get them out there through this medium. So I've got a responsibility to them, not just to myself. I've got a responsibility to them. So I use that whenever I'm feeling I've got 50 episodes racked up and I haven't edited it. And as you say, I'm going away in 2 weeks.
I will say that is one of the positives of having Patreon supporters is
Sure.
like they're kind of in a weird way holding you accountable to continue to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, they're going to stop supporting you and they might even get mad and say other things about you. So I think having those accountability partners, even if they don't know they're my accountability partners, they are.
Absolutely. Makes a big difference.
Yes.
We probably should start to think about wrapping up. I do have a few questions that I ask just about everybody. What's the worst and or best piece of advice anyone's given you?
So probably the best advice that I've ever gotten from another photographer, and I have to go all the way back to my friend Sarah Marino, is like to just get rid of all my expectations in going on my trips. I'd mentioned that kind of seminal moment in 2017 where I had that aha moment and it changed everything. Earlier that same week, I had spent a day photographing with Sarah and Ron and Alex Noriega and Jennifer Renwick and David. And it was really crucial for me to get that kind of feedback from them in terms of, and also just seeing how they approached photography. Like they were so much more laid back than I was. Like,
Sure.
I was like, oh, we need to go over here. We need to go to this. And they're just like, oh, we're just going to chill here for a while. It's fine. I'm like, oh, so this is how you guys do it. I got it now. So I think that was the best advice for me is like to just eliminate all expectations.
Right.
Worst advice? I'm not sure that it was given to me by anyone, but it's something that I thought I had to do. And that was to like get all of the best gear that you think you have to get right out the gate, right?
Yeah.
When I decided photography was my thing, I bought a Nikon D800 and I bought the holy trinity of lenses and I bought every filter and I bought like all these stupid square filters and wide angle filters and all this other crap I didn't need or ever use. So I think like buying into the gear hype machine is bad advice.
Yeah, totally. I've minimized myself to a sling backpack with one body, 3 lenses and my filters and some wipes and extra cards and batteries. That's all that I usually carry around with me. And the tripod, of course, if I want to use that.
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes
I was just going to say, sometimes I'll do a hike, one lens, one camera.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I've done that a few times as well because carting around the big 70 to 200 can be a bit much sometimes if
That's
you're
what I
on a
said.
long walk.
I was gonna say the lens that I do that with is always my 100 to 400.
Yeah,
Funny.
if I know I'm going to want that, then I'm throwing the other two out. But yeah, it is usually the Trinity, except my 24 to 70 fell over on a tripod break, so I'm dealing with that was an f2.8. Unfortunately, I'm dealing with an f4 24 to 105, which is still a great lens, but just not quite the same. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm usually throwing one or two lenses out if it's going to be a long hike. It's just getting too old to carry 10 kilos of camera.
It gets rough sometimes, man.
Yeah. Where do you see photography's place in society, and what do you see as its future?
Yeah, I don't subscribe to all the doom and gloom about AI and about all of that stuff. I think photography as a medium survived Photoshop. It survived compositing.
Survived digital.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, I still see photography as being the most accessible artistic medium, visual medium that gives you very fast access for self-expression and or showing the world how you see the world. I see it as a vehicle through which we have the opportunity to engage the public in truth, even though we all know that what you see in the four boxes of the four lines of a camera frame, it's not truth. But I do think that if people can trust you as a photographer to be showing them something that actually really did happen, I think people are going to come to value that more, especially with the advent of AI and the proliferation of AI and digital editing techniques that we see happening more and more. So I think people are going to start making more of an emphasis on seeking out creators who they can trust.
Yeah, I think that's very sage. I like it. What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
Oh man, just being outside with my friends and getting to see these amazing places on planet Earth and figuring out how to show the world what draws me to them and how I see them. And I love all of those things combined. And I live for those trips where it's like me and two or three of my friends, and we're out there for 10 days and you're around the campfire after the end of the day and you're passing everyone's cameras around, chimping to see what everyone got that day. And you're like, I can't believe you got that. What was I? That I love that about photography, that kinship, that friendship, that energy you get around being with other photographers.
Nice. What's your least favorite thing about photography?
Man, there's so many, but I'll try to keep it to one. I think my least favorite thing is I feel like there's not a lot of justice in landscape photography world. Like I'm very sensitive to ethics and morals and like doing the right thing. And I see a lot of people out there in the photography community who are engaging in a lot of really unethical behavior, treating other people really poorly, and they find lots of success. And that drives me crazy, that kind of disconnection between who these people are as humans versus how much success they're finding. And so that's probably my least favorite thing.
Fair enough. Are there any photographers out there that I need to be talking to? I know you've spoken to most of them, and come on, give me one from the list.
Man, just one. Gosh, you've probably hit a lot of my favorites already, but I think someone who's super interesting right now in terms of she's doing a lot of really interesting things from a business perspective, but also
Okay.
her photography is really super unique and different and interesting and out there. And also she forces you to think, and it's Beth Bulow.
I've spoken to Beth already. Yeah, she's
All right.
fantastic. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, she's great, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, she's got some amazing work. And as you say, doing some really interesting stuff from a business perspective. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to go looking what episode number it is, but yeah, you know where to go.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't think of one that you hadn't already had. That's one.
No,
That's one of my
fine.
That's one of my pet peeves when I ask that question. And someone says someone who's already been on my show, so I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm used to it. All right. You know what's coming next. There's only one question everybody wants to know the answer to. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do, but not a lot of the time. It
Okay.
has to be, my wife really likes it, so
Yeah.
she tends to order it a lot. And I do like it. But I will say this about pineapple, and that'll maybe a lot of people don't know. Pineapple and kiwi both have an enzyme that apparently, when it gets on your tongue, it completely neutralizes your taste buds.
Uh-huh.
So if you eat a lot of pineapple and then you eat something else, it will not taste good.
Yeah, you drink
So
too many pina coladas, your lips go numb.
yeah, so you've been warned. Don't overdo it on the pineapple.
Absolutely. I'll tell you another little secret. You get kiwi juice or pineapple juice, and you want the tenderest steak ever. Give it a soak, 10 minutes. That's all it takes. That
Makes
enzyme
sense.
starts to break down some of the tissue on the surface of the steak, and your steak will be absolutely melt in your mouth.
Oh, all right. I'll have to try that one sometime.
Tastes good too, that pineapple-y sweet flavour, which is pretty cool as
Right.
well.
Awesome.
All right. It's been an absolute joy talking to you, Matt. Wonderful to have you on the show. Where can people find your work? I know a lot of people know that already, but for those that don't, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the best place is my website, mattpaynephotography.com.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Matt.
Thank you, Grant. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at gruntswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on a load of different social media. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grunt Swinburne. I hope to see you out shooting soon.